You're going to hear a little bit more about NJUMR in a bit, but we are a statewide coalition.
I'm Jocelyn Sparkle Earl, and I'm here at the NJUMR meeting here in Atlantic City.
So to that end, we have been focused on
now.
providing free and open to the public events to get folks ready for when legalization comes to New Jersey. And just to be clear, because we had some confusion in our last event, we do not yet have legalization in New Jersey. So the bill has not yet passed, but you'll hear more about that. I first want to acknowledge someone. We had an event in Cumberland County, and this lovely woman came up to me. She said, "I would love to do one in AC." And I said, "Great, well, get us a venue and a partner, and we'll make it happen." And she called me the next day, and she had done it. So Jasmine, I'd like to thank you so much back there. That's what's so great about working in the cannabis area, is that we're all family, right? So thank you so much, Jasmine. And I'd like to thank Councilman Fauntleroy in the back, who secured this space for us. Because we are committed to equity and to making this accessible to everybody, we rely on things like free space. So we're really so grateful to the city for providing this venue, and the folks who work here are amazing. It's been the best experience we've had throughout the state. So I'd like to just quickly tell you about your panel and about the format for tonight. We have, and also acknowledge that there's been some changes in the lineup. And we are so grateful to David Serrano, who filled in. Because Bill Caruso had a conflict, and our other speaker had another emergency. So we switched it up a little bit. And so you're going to hear from each speaker for about 10 minutes. Then we're going to do Q&A and Leo is coming in right now, who is Leo Bridgewater, filled in at the last minute. We're so grateful to him too. So Leo, come on up, get your space at the front table. So you're going to hear from each speaker for about 10 minutes, talking about their area of expertise. We'll have about 10 minutes of asking questions, and then we'll go to the next speaker. And I am going to control the time. So, but don't get frustrated if you don't get to ask your question. We know Q&A is everything at this event. When everyone is done, we'll have open Q&A. You can ask questions of any of the speakers. So I'd just like to quickly introduce your speakers. At the very end, we have Kristin Jordan. She is the chair of Newman Ferrara's Emerging Cannabis and Hemp Practice Group. She has over 20 years of real estate, state licensing, and government regulatory experience. Kristin currently advises laboratory testing facilities, producers, manufacturers, retailers, ancillary businesses, and nonprofit organizations in the cannabis and hemp industries. And Kristin came from New York City to join us today, so we're so grateful. Can we give her a round of applause? Next, we have David Serrano, who is here from Colorado. And David is the Chief Business Officer for 360, a full-service consulting and management firm that provides sustainable business development solutions to the legal cannabis, hemp, and ancillary industries. David is a U.S. Navy veteran, using his skills developed in his service to advise businesses in almost every sector of the cannabis industry. Next, we have Dianna, who is my partner in cannabis advocacy. We do this statewide to ensure that this legalization bill has racial and social justice at the forefront. Dianna serves as policy counsel for the ACLU in New Jersey. In that role, she conducts legal and policy analysis related to the ACLU's advocacy campaigns. Her work focuses primarily on criminal justice reform issues, of which this is one, and she coordinates ACLU New Jersey's coalitions, in particular this coalition. Next, we have Leo Bridgewater Sr. Leo, and I forgot to have applause for the other speakers, so I apologize. And Leo just jumped on the train and came down here to make himself available, which is how committed he is to this work. Leo is the co-founder of the New Jersey Cannabis Commission. He is a U.S. Army veteran dedicated to supporting his military brothers and sisters by expanding access to marijuana for PTSD, pain, and other pressing needs. Leo is also the chapter president for the New York, New Jersey chapter of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and he also happens to be one of the nicest people on the planet. So, applause for Leo.
With that, if you're just joining us, this is our panel.
With our panel, Councilman Fauntleroy, did you want to come up and just say a couple words? Councilman Fauntleroy.
And now, Councilman Fauntleroy is coming up.
How's everybody doing tonight? Really want to thank everybody for coming out. Really want to thank Elizabeth Rubin. She really helped me out in bringing this here. I went to training solely on Bridgewater, and it was amazing. So bringing it to Atlantic City and being on the forefront of this and making sure people are informed and knowledgeable about what's coming to Atlantic City. The marijuana industry is going to be bigger than what the casinos could ever be. And we need to be at the forefront of that. So I'm glad you guys came out, and I'm glad you guys received the information. Thank you.
Thanks again, and thanks so much to the city for having us. So we're going to start off with Dianna, who's going to give us a little information on the importance of diversity and inclusion in the industry, the current legislative landscape, so that y'all can understand how soon this is going to be happening, and just share some of our other advocacy expertise. So Dianna, thank you.
If you're just tuning in, this is the NJUMR, New Jersey United.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for coming out this evening. I'm really encouraged and really pleasantly surprised to see so many people out here. I was a little worried that the weather forecast would scare some people away, so thank you for coming. So my name is Dianna. I'm the Policy Counsel with the American Civil Liberties Union of New Jersey, the ACLU. And in 2015, the ACLU formed this coalition, New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform, because for us, legalization is a racial justice and social justice issue. And so we have been advocating for legalization of adult use for people 21 and up ever since. And we've come a long way since 2015, when some of the legislators were laughing at us when we talked about legalization as something that could have really happened here in New Jersey, and now we're starting to really listen, which shows that our conversation about legalization has evolved tremendously, and we really do now have a chance to make this happen, to make a difference for all the millions of New Jerseyans who live in our state, and the thousands of people who are arrested every day or every year. What is the current state of legalization in New Jersey right now? Well, we have bills that have been introduced in both the Senate and the Assembly, but those bills are not in their final form, and those bills don't capture racial and social justice the way they should. And so how should they actually capture racial and social justice? Well, there are 4 key priorities that NJUMR, that this coalition is pushing for. We want to make sure that if legalization comes to New Jersey, it has to have automatic expungement of people's prior records, because we think it is purely disingenuous to build an industry. It's disingenuous to legalize behavior that U.S. presidents have admitted doing, and build an industry based off of this, but force people to continue bearing the stigma of an arrest for prior behavior. So we want to see automatic expungement of people's prior records. We want to make sure that any tax revenue that's generated goes back to the communities and provides funding for community programs like education, drug treatment and drug prevention programming, reentry services, adult education, job training, programming that our communities desperately need. We also want to make sure that there's limited home grow, because people with limited mobility or limited income shouldn't be forced to be subject to the pricing whims of businesses. And we want to make sure that there's a real meaningful access to the jobs and the business ownership opportunities that are going to come with this industry. We're talking about multi-billion-dollar industry that we're trying to build here in this state, and our communities of color and our poor communities, all New Jersey communities, need to have access to a piece of that pie. And so we think it's very critical for these elements to be included in any legislation that gets considered in New Jersey. But this is where you all come into play. This is where you have the power, because I mentioned that there are bills that are currently introduced, but those bills, crucially, are not yet final, right? The legislators who have put forward these bills, they have said, it's not ready yet, I know it needs to be improved, tell me what should be in the bill. So our job in NJUMR is to make sure that all of you, the New Jersey residents, understand that you have tremendous power right now. You have the power to tell your legislators exactly what needs to be in this bill. You have the power to tell your representatives legalization needs to happen for New Jersey, and it needs to be done right. Because what we have seen in other states is that they have legalized, but they've forgotten about the racial justice. Or they've legalized and they said, we'll take care of racial and social justice later. So it means that they are now they're backtracking and they're trying to scramble, trying to fix things that they should have gotten right from day one. Here in New Jersey, we can learn from those lessons and we can incorporate justice from the outset. And so I implore each and every one of you, if you haven't already, at the front table where you signed in, take one of these take action sheets. It has a list of all the information, all of the steps that you can take tonight. They're available outside. They're also available at the refreshment table. There are a number of things that you can do to make sure that your legislators are heard. Because in New Jersey, we're making more arrests than ever before. We're making nearly 25,000 arrests per year for marijuana possession alone. And those arrests are disproportionately impacting people of color. They're disproportionately targeting Blacks and Latinos. And it has to stop. The injustice has to stop. The war on drugs was intentionally created, explicitly created, to target people of color. And so to end this war, we need to make sure that we account for racial justice too. And you have the power to do it. So please, help us make it happen and take action.
Okay, folks. Without your help, it will never happen.
Thank you. By the way, for anyone who's seen that show Between Two Ferns, I'm having that moment right here. I'm having my Between Two Ferns experience. Or Ferns, sorry. So we have someone who'd like to address us briefly. That is Mayor Frank Gilliam. And again, we would like to thank you.
This is the mayor of Atlantic City, Frank Gilliam, coming to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. This is the type of forums that we have to have so we allow ourselves to be in the game. Cannabis is what we consider the new gold. And there's a rush to this, and we can't basically rush to it that we find ourselves rushed outside of it. Because cannabis is something that I believe in terms of having, for one, not just the economic aspect of it, because that's the menial part, but the social justice part of it. So many of us have family members that have not been able to gain employment or to basically be allowed to go to college or to improve their lives because someone thought that cannabis should be the end of their life. Because we are basically finding ourselves in front of a wave that could basically, in my opinion, turn Atlantic City around, because most people look at Atlantic City and think that it's lost. It's never been lost. It's how we begin to create avenues and opportunities for economic gain for everyone when something happens that is so prosperous like cannabis. It's also important to realize that we're an urban town. And as much as I support cannabis as a means of Atlantic City, it has to be diversified. It makes no sense to push something and not allow it to basically touch every corner of Atlantic City. We've seen ourselves taken advantage of with the casino industry. Promised that we would actually get lower taxes, better jobs. We find ourselves 3 times as worse now than we ever were before. So it's very important for us to sit down and give our voice. I heard someone say that the power is within the people. That's not a cliche. That is real life activity. The country needs us to wake up, now more than ever, because the absence of your voice, someone will fill that void if you do not speak up for yourselves. And as the mayor of Atlantic City, that is my job to make sure, one, I speak up for Atlantic Cityans, I speak up for those who have basically been abandoned, I speak up for those who have been ostracized from this particular aspect of life. But more importantly, we must join hands with folks that understand our same ploy. The power is within you, because I become more important when I walk into a room and I have all of you saying the same things that I'm saying. The power is within you when you tell me that you want something. It's only my job to do that because you are my boss. So when it comes to cannabis, don't just look at it from an economic standpoint. It's a new way of life. We're also suffering from a high usage of opioids. There is a way out of opioids through medicinal cannabis. We're just scratching the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all the things that could basically come from this one plant. What we need to be able to do is find ways to quantify what cannabis does so we can kill the voice of those who think that cannabis is a gateway drug, to kill that myth of those who think that cannabis causes folks to go crazy. We should be really pointing the fingers at those lobbyists that utilize the ability to have you have a pill that starts you on the opioid downfall. I'm not going to hold you. I just wanted to stop by and let you know that as your mayor of Atlantic City, it was important for us to host forums like this to get you educated. Because the more that we're educated on this process, the better off we'll be when folks try to come to this town and begin to lobby us to do things. So we want to be in front of the information. And again, I thank this organization for coming. And again, you are the power. So basically, let your voice be heard. Thank you.
All right, folks. That was Mayor Frank Gilliam of Atlantic City. And as you can
So
see,
we've been talking a lot about equity and history and racial
Everyone
justice,
supported
which
this
obviously is essential to our coalition. But now we're going to move into what I think a lot of you came here for, is some really solid advice about what you can be doing to prepare for the new economy. So our first speaker is Leo Bridgewater. He's going to give us some advice on how on cultivation and harvest business opportunities. And Leo has a host of expertise that could help the aspiring cannabis entrepreneurs. So I'm going to hand him the mic.
okay, so Leo will become
Hi, everybody.
our next speaker.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, first of all, real quick, who here, by showing hands, who here, this is your first time cannabis event, anything, just to, okay. All right. Welcome. Okay, my first piece of
First one
advice,
at the last.
take out your phones right now. I'll give you a minute. Take out your phones and put it on video. Because there's a lot of information that is going to be passed off here that you're not going to be able to remember, number one. Number two, it's too much to be trying to write down. So the easiest thing that I can tell you to do is to pull your phone out and hit record, because we're about to have us a moment.
Go live.
Okay.
Yeah, if you
Does
want
that
to go
mean
live,
free
because everyone
samples?
within the sound of my voice is going to want to, you're going to want to share what I'm about to tell you. Last February, I had the opportunity of going out to Las Vegas with your mayor, and we took a tour of cultivation sites, retail sites, the whole 9 yards. We saw everything from seed to sale. That's what part of the vertical licensing structure means. From seed to sell. I mean, you're planting a plant, you're doing everything, including selling it yourself. As opposed to a horizontal model, which is either you're the cultivator, or you're the retailer, or you're the processor, or the transportation. Okay? That's what vertical and horizontal means. But I want to tell you something real quick. When we were in Las Vegas, your mayor drew a lot of attention because Atlantic City was in town. And because Atlantic City was in town, the industry in Vegas was, because see, what your mayor got to see is you got to see what was done right and what was done wrong. And so what I hope is that I hope you all understood one thing that I think a lot of people sometimes tend to forget or miss is a sense of urgency. I understand exactly why he came up here and said what he said the way he said it, because I saw what he saw. Plain talk, folks. It's not that it's coming, it's here. Your city, your state has been divided. There is a conversation that is being had, and you've largely been absent from the conversation because the words that you're hearing is gateway drug. Okay, if this was a TV series, we are on season 8, episode 3. A lot of our lawmakers are on season 1, episode 2. Spoiler alert, it's not a gateway drug. That's season 3, episode 7. It'll blow your mind. Now, what are we talking when we say, season 8? What is happening in season 8? Okay, I'll speed y'all up real quick because this is what's got your mayor all amped up and why the urgency. Because we have to start thinking on a macro level. We need things like the Hemp and Cannabis College of New Jersey. This is the type of stuff they be naming buildings after people for, y'all. And let me explain something else to you. We, all of us in this room, are the only people who will ever experience the end of prohibition on cannabis in New Jersey. What do you want that to look like?
The Roaring 20s.
The ACLU, Dianna will tell you, 25,000 arrests a year for people who look just like me and you. Yeah? So we have a police culture issue. Okay? We have 81% of the higher echelon seats of positions in the cannabis industry and ownership. Older white males. That is a sign of chaos, folks. The industry is in such a baby stage, there isn't even an industry unit, standard unit of measurement. You understand? This literally requires a macro level way of thinking, the likes of which we haven't been in a position to do so in a very long time. We are not just talking about a cultural shift in how we view this plan. We are also talking about facilitating a massive transfer of wealth. The logistics behind it, damn near can't be quantified. And it is all going to play out here. The mayor was right. He said, don't take that lightly. He needs your voice. All of our elected officials who are for this need our voice. In season 8, we're talking science, technology, engineering, art, and math. I've had conversations with Governor Murphy on a regular about this. When he was candidate Murphy, this was a big deal to him. These are the things, this is the future, folks. And understand something, when we're talking education, we ain't talking just little kids. We're talking grown adults, all of us, because we have to have a workforce. And when we talk about that cultural shift, it's also in terms of how we earn a living. This is the way. I talked with Reed Gussiar, assemblyman out of the 15th district, my district, Trenton. He's the author of A 1348. I just got finished talking with him a few days ago, and we got the minority set-asides up from 15% to 25%. A huge bill. The thing is that most folks don't understand. We will be the second state to legislatively legalize cannabis. And that is a big deal because the history of this industry has not been kind to people who look like me and you and women. That is the history of this industry. And so what we're talking about doing and why Mayor Gilliam is standing here looking like he's about ready to jump out of his shell is because, seriously, I don't blame him. If it wasn't for the fact that I saw what he saw, I wouldn't be saying it the way that I'm saying it. My God. And the things that man has to think about, I don't blame you, sir. Seriously. I was on that trip. Yes. It is real. It is happening. It is coming. The vertical model in terms of from a licensing perspective. What's great about
about it is that it's a job creator. You're talking being able to have more positions within the company, within the city of Atlanta, and watching it play off when it comes to your entrepreneurs. We have to start doing things like investing within our own communities. So you have crowdsourcing, you have the funds, there are so many things that you can do. On April 24th, I will be here next week. We'll be doing an event at Dante Hall, North Mississippi, from 2 to 6. It's a lunch and learn, the New Jersey Cannabis Commission. Find me on Facebook, find me on Instagram. I am bringing some of the most impressive minds in the cannabis industry from a minority perspective here to Atlantic City, and we are going to have a very meaningful conversation. That's another one. You bring your video cameras and your notes so that we can help you out. April 24th. Okay, thank you.
Okay, folks, so you know now,
All right,
April 24th. We need to be here. This is the infancy of this industry. Get on board while it's still
dispensary, etc.
just starting out.
Investor education, continued cannabis education, and all of the things that you're interested in to start a cannabis business. Thank you, Nick.
Good evening, folks. So, my name is David Serrano. I am the Chief Business Officer of Harvest 360, and I'm also one of the co-founders of the organization. Between my partners and I, we have serviced over 120 different businesses in this industry. I have personally invested over 25,000 hours in business planning, writing, and strategy and execution for various clients, and as well as some internal projects that my company has going on currently. So it's kind of the get real moment. How much does it cost to get into this game? You know, it's not cheap. It's one of the biggest restrictions that people of color and folks from lower middle class and lower class communities have real struggles with. And what you're looking at from a cultivation perspective to start, looking at about 300 square feet, $300 per square feet on average. And when you kind of look at the various states and how they administrate those licenses, you have two types of states. You have a state like New Jersey, which is merit-based, limited licensing, which will require largely larger cultivations. So, that $300 a square foot could be for a cultivation at, 100,000 square feet or more to service a population like the state of New Jersey, limited cultivators in the space. You're essentially putting the strain or the requirement on the cultivators to satisfy those demands. In states like Colorado, where you have open licensing, you have cultivations that are 10, 20, 30, up to over 100,000 square feet. And it also largely depends on your ag zone. So in Colorado, in our southern ag zone, it's ideal for hybrid greenhouses where you can certainly reduce a lot of your upfront costs. So you could also reduce your ongoing costs of energy and because the lighting is being supplemented. Whereas if you try to do that here in New Jersey, because of the sheer humidity aspects, try to build a hybrid greenhouse, you probably likely find yourself pumping out a lot of water out of your facility. So your requirement to have an R rating, which is basically the thickness of your walls and the ability to keep in or keep out certain elements and maintain an ecosystem that is perfect for growing plants in a state like New Jersey will be rather expensive. So when you're looking at a cost analysis, and we did one for very recently for the state of New Jersey for a medical cultivation, long-term plan, $50 million worth of investment. The retail side, you're looking at obviously a lower investment. I would say anywhere between $200 to $300 a square foot is pretty standard in this industry. And your costs obviously are going to be really basically labor and design of the facility. Certain license costs are applicable. What comes along with the licensing cost is the ability to actually win that license. In a state like New Jersey, where they're doing it under a point system, you have right now you might have between 13 and 15 different categories that they're looking at. Each category, you might not have the subject matter expertise in your group at the moment or within yourself to fill out that criteria in a way where every single point counts, so you want to get those points. So generally what you see is companies hiring subject matter experts that are assigned to each of those categories, and you're driving your cost up, which might start out as a $20,000 application to a $500,000 endeavor. You're essentially paying top dollars to subject matter experts to review, study, analyze, and write their portion of these applications. Cost money. And the obvious issue with the competition is that you're going to have institutional funds, institutional companies that have the funds to deploy and have the subject matter experts deploy to these types of applications. And now have somebody from my community in Hoboken, Jersey City area, Hoboken area. How do they gather the subject matter expertise, the finance, to actually compete in this type of application? It becomes very difficult. So you have companies in the space that are set up specifically to guide folks through those application processes. Again, they cost a lot of money. There's different ways to raise money. Obviously, you have your investment way. You have Regulation A, Regulation D, limit how many people you can speak to, how you can speak to them, how you can publicize your investment, and it becomes quite tedious, and without the right legal representation, most folks get in trouble because they do it wrong. That costs money, a lot of it. You're talking about a securities attorney who can probably easily charge you $20,000 to $40,000 just to help you raise the type of capital we're talking about here. And it's extremely important to take these rules into deep consideration, because you might raise the money, you might have asked 50 people, and you're only allowed to ask 35, and the next thing you know is you're being reported by the SEC and you're being shut down. And all that money has to be returned, and if you spent it, oh, God help you. So,
smoke.
Understanding how to raise capital is very important. Understanding how much capital you need to raise is extremely important. And I don't want to scare everybody away from the industry, because guess what? I just talked about two sides of this industry that are really maybe represent 1% of the actual manpower that's going to go into making this piece what it's going to be. You're looking at labs, you're looking at distribution, you're looking at the people who are artists and create amazing brands that make a crazy amount of money in this space because they are doing exceptionally great work. You have, delivery systems and all sorts of different things that I think Kristin's going to be touching a lot more on. But the bottom line is, this is to serve as a reality check, and not to scare you away, because there are answers for all of this. There is support in the industry, and if we look to each other as a community and stand by each other and support each other, I think it's possible to see some of the faces in this room one day raise that money, submit those applications, and actually win a license and be at the forefront of the space. We talked about, we talked about all of these modalities in the industry. What's very important is education. And Leo touched on what that education component looks like. In the space today, we have several dozen training institutes that are unaccredited and some accredited institutions that are teaching things like mixed hydrocarbon extractions. This is a science class. And if you were to go to CU Boulder, one of my colleagues is teaching and showing folks, what these extraction processes look like. And so, continued education is extremely important. Doctors need to be educated. Nurses, the medical community in general needs to be educated.
I educate them.
And we have an educator in the room. And it's so important that first we understand the plant. And as an entrepreneur in this space, who started as a patient in 2011, a medical refugee from New Jersey, I had to relocate to Colorado because they didn't accept PTSD as a condition, and I was recently medically retired from the military. My mother, who's standing right there, was my first patient in the state, and she's also one of the first licensed patients in the state. And so, understanding, where this is going from an educational point of view, we have to start with the plan. There are so many mysteries to be unlocked here, and if anybody says they had it all figured out already, they're lying. And the fact of the matter is, we know a fraction of what we are going to know today versus what we're going to know in season 8. Season 8, series episode 2. And what we're talking about are the various terpenes and the cannabinoids that are in this plant and the effects that it has on the human being, on the body, on the mind. The ability to unlock those secrets will lead to new innovation, will lead to new drug development. We know that a lot of what has held this industry back has been multi-millions of dollars being poured in against this industry from very certain industries that see it as a threat. I don't believe that it is a threat to them. I believe that there is a bridge here to be made. In that, there are certain communities, the Department of Defense, military, government officials, folks that don't want to experience the psychoactive effects, want to be able to walk into a pharmacy one day and have your insurance cover it. These things are quite possible. It's very important to ensure that the regulation is set so that we don't get pushed out in those occurrences, but that we become a partner in medicating our community with cannabis. So when I hear, these companies are threats, those companies are threats, I think to myself, well, as a peacemaker, how could I build a bridge? How could we build a bridge to those industries so that we can all win? And that nobody's really scared of it, but that there's a healthy competition. That's really, the future of this industry. A couple of ways of kind of getting around some of the higher expenses of getting into this industry. You have various types of loan money. You have folks that have really just looked at the property entity as well as equipment leasing as a very viable option for them to receive returns on this industry without necessarily having to be licensed in this industry. So that is something y'all can take advantage of. If you get a license and you don't have $30 million to put it up, there's over a dozen companies in the space that'll give you a hard money loan today that will lease that space back to you with all of the equipment inside of it. And it certainly does come at a cost. You might as well just look at them as a big investor at that point because they're going to take a lot of your money. The point is, there are ways to fundamentally capitalize your business here in the industry where you shouldn't be scared, but you have to have great credit. You have to have an awesome team. You have to fill your team with subject matter experts, people that are, the way that I like to see it is when I built my company, I made sure that my partners were smarter than me. And I feel if you guys adopt that, you'll do fine in this industry. You just have to let go of the ego and be a little bit of have some humility and work together as a community, and you'll see certain clusters rise together. And it's certainly something that I have been privy to witnessing for the last 7 years, and it's been such an incredible journey. With Harvest 360, our company, just being able to see all of the businesses come in with nothing in hand, and now today selling products globally. And we've got to witness this, and I can't wait to see what my home state is going to do. I feel like this should be the forefront of the industry. We certainly have the population, the mind power, the educated folks, and just New Jersey attitude. We can get it. And so I'm really happy to see all you folks here.
I was thinking the same
can't wait to answer
thing.
your questions. And
so hopefully during the questions and answers. Okay.
Is this working? Yes.
Okay.
She's going to go, but we just wanted, in case people came just to hear David, we'll just do 10 minutes of Q&A and then go to Kristin. Does anyone have any questions
coming in
just
on
for
the
him?
Yeah.
Oh, we got a question from Facebook Live. What is it, Jocelyn?
Okay. Question is from Daniel.
From Daniel.
You're zeroing in on the problem NJUMR NJUMR is advocating, not just for legislation, but for legislation that has racial and social justice.
I think we're gonna. Sorry. Go. Anyone for David? Yes. Sir.
My question goes to the finance, because everything requires money. Myself being can, just for example, can people that are already in growing hotness, do you have to have all these scientific people coming on your team to get it done and to get it legal in New Jersey? Is that going to be a requirement? And why can't New Jersey? What's wrong with piggybacking? You know what I'm saying? Why can't we take the information that Colorado has, that Arizona has, that California has, and have that transferred to New Jersey? Even though we all are states, with different laws, why can't we use their information?
Thank you for your question. So you asked me questions, sir, and I appreciate it. So the transfer, switching out your crop. So if you're talking about hemp, industrial agriculture, I specifically have worked with some sugar beet farmers in Colorado that have transitioned their crops. And the biggest issue that you're going to find is in the machining. And basically, like the headers on your tractor, you're going to need to change them up because the current headers, without being customized, will create a lot of waste. Some of your drill and your crop rotations and all of those things kind of are similar. We do know that we can mitigate the use of some pesticides, so that's been very helpful for farmers, and that's basically because of the canopy that's built. You've got big leaves going outward, and and that's actually specifically to mitigate herbs or weeds. And I did say pesticides. I apologize. I meant herbicides. So the transfer of the crop or switching your crop isn't the most difficult thing. There's enough knowledge out there. There are co-ops now. There are groups that share that information, even share equipment amongst each other. And I thought it was a really great thing that they're doing out there in Colorado. When your other question was staffing, looking for the right subject matter experts. And that's so extremely important. At Harvest 360, we have a geneticist on board, we have an MD who is world renowned, and studied the endocannabinoid system for a very long time. And so for us, when we're developing technologies in-house, we certainly want to have the right type of scientists, as well as, you need a little bit of passion too. You want to work with people that are invested in this plan, not just from an academic point of view, but because it's personally affected them or their family. And I've always found that to be one of the greatest team building aspects that you can provide to your team is when you're bringing on people that are really truly invested in the plan. And thirdly, the last question is piggybacking and that gathering of information. And basically what we look at today is we have a whole bunch of trade organizations that have started up, and in these trade organizations, they carry a lot of information, and they do it in a panel similar to this, where you can sit down and listen to somebody's experience that they've garnered for the last 5-10 years, depending on what state they're from. And so I highly recommend going to trade shows, to conferences. The biggest one or one of the bigger ones in the country is the Vegas MJ Biz Daily. It's really great. The conference show, the Indo Expo. I can go on and on and on and on. And I don't mean to leave any of them out because they all bring a certain amount of value. And that's the knowledge base. That's transferring that knowledge base and looking for partnerships. And it's a really good space to do that too. So I hope I was able to answer your question.
We'll do one more question for David.
Just a question about the hard loans that you mentioned. Where do we go seek a loan at? When the banks won't touch it because of the federal regulations, where do we go to actually look for a loan?
Great question. Obviously, the banks aren't, or the institutional, yes, the banks aren't doing these types of loans. And so what you're seeing a lot of companies start up that are private financiers that are really looking for acquisition of property, equipment, and oftentimes, in some cases, even some intellectual properties. You can find these guys at these trade shows that I was just talking about. You just walk around the room. They'll probably be likely 2 to 3, minimum up to 10. And we've accumulated a lot of data. Some of these guys stick around. Some of them have gone away. Some of them start up and just kind of float away. So I couldn't give you very particular pointed advice as to where to find these companies. In my experience, I found a lot of them to be at the trade shows and conferences.
Another question for David?
Just one more.
Okay. All right, we'll do one more and then there'll be time for questions at the end.
Mr. Serrano, will Harvest 360 help the small business owners for a fee by using your chemists, doctors, and with what you've already accomplished, instead of a small business owner like myself starting from scratch for a small fee?
I really appreciate it. So
maybe military discount, shipment.
AARP.
My partner and CEO, Todd Scatini, he's a retired 27-year lieutenant colonel. Spent the last 5 years as a senior military attaché overseas, Army, yeah. And Todd and I got to speak a couple of times and exchange comments. But basically what I want to answer is immediately, yes. The Harvest 360 is set up to build this technology for the space. We don't deploy it ourselves. We license this out for royalty, and there are definitely going to be some military discounts there, especially for shipping.
Does Jersey have an advantage because we're the garden state and everything grows here? You said something about the humidity, but what is the advantage, and why wouldn't that give us like a really good discount?
This will be my last question for now. So the Garden State, the soil here, because of the shells from the beach and everything, it's just some of the best soil in the country. Colorado for certain can't beat this soil. But when we talk about humidity, we're talking about that because we're also consuming the plant. So yeah, we can definitely grow some big buds out here, but we have to be worried about it more and making sure that folks aren't inhaling that as they're taking their medication. But when you look at your crops like hemp, it really doesn't matter if you're using it for certain fibers or if you're even extracting isolates and things of that nature. And not everybody agrees with every modality of how we use the plant, and that's to each his own. But with when you're making medicine, very specifically, you're making medicine, whether somebody is taking it for adult use purposes or not, it's still medicine. We have to ensure that it's 100% clean and safe medicine that's going into the bodies of folks that are using this daily, like my mom. So if I can't give my mom a plant that I don't know or didn't trust, I wouldn't consume it myself. So I want to make sure that for me, my personal practice would be to treat my mom, and ensure that we're not making them sicker and causing other issues that can be detrimental to their health.
Thank you.
We can save more questions at the end, but I want to give Kristin a chance to speak. So, what businesses can you get into that cost under $500,000? And what are other states doing to promote equity and inclusion in their cannabis economy? So these are two things that Kristin's going to talk about, and she has tons of other expertise. And then when she's done, you can ask questions of the whole panel. Just a couple quick housekeeping things. We do have snacks and water over here if anybody's getting hungry and thirsty. I know a lot of you skipped the sign-in sheet. If you could please sign in with at least your email address so we can alert you about our events and also get you involved in the advocacy around this issue. We hear from elected officials. Well, we're not hearing from our constituents that they care about this bill being crafted a certain way. So we want to get you involved in the work to influence how this legislation is done. And then there's also that action sheet that's out on the table. So those are my housekeeping, and now I'm going to hand it over to Kristin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. First and foremost, I want to thank NJUMR for hosting this event. I do a lot of these events that are happening in the New York, New Jersey area, and they don't look like this, and they're certainly not free. And so I think it's vital to have an organization like NJUMR mobilizing the community and providing the tools and resources necessary to allow for a diverse and inclusive industry. So a couple things that I want to talk about today. So who in the room has $30 to $50 million to start a cultivation and a retail facility? Not many people. And if you have that, wonderful, you can tune out for a little bit. I'm not talking to you. So what we're going to talk about tonight is about small businesses and what cannabis can do for lower income folks who want to get into the industry. And just a little background on me, just so you understand where I'm coming from. I am a real estate attorney by trade, a corporate attorney. I worked in Wall Street for a number of years, Morgan Stanley and a number of other companies, Fortune 500 companies. And then in 2015, I was borrowing some office space for a charity event that I was hosting for a nonprofit that I sit on the board. And one of the partners, who's a longtime friend, turned to me and said, why do you keep making rich people richer? At the time, I was running real estate for SoulCycle, an indoor cycling studio that cost $35 for a 45-minute cycling class. And when he asked me that question, I really thought, well, geez, I don't know what else to do. What are you proposing? And he had a law firm on 32nd and Broadway and said, well, why don't you build a practice? Why don't you become an entrepreneur? And I really didn't know what that looked like. I had been an associate at law firms for years and just showed up to work and got paid. And when I started looking around to see, what opportunities there were, medical cannabis came to mind. I used to service the hospitality industry doing liquor licenses. And so when I took a look at what was happening with cannabis, specifically in New York City, we saw that the legalization bill that was pending was going to go under the liquor authority, and so it would really mirror the same sort of process as getting a liquor license. Now, in New Jersey, it's a little bit different. The current legalization model is underneath the Attorney General, as far as but the legalization is Attorney General, right? Yeah. So it'll be a little bit different here, but until the law is passed, who knows? So from that perspective, I was thinking about, how I build my practice. And my thinking was that, in mature industries like out in Denver and Colorado and the Pacific Northwest, those folks, it's a very mature industry, very sophisticated players that are likely going to come into our community. And likely those will be the $50 million, the $30 million entry points for those players. It's not a community that I care so much about. It's not a community that I think I can support. Where I think I can be helpful is in helping to build not only opportunities for communities of color, which is a passion of mine as a person of color and as a family member of several people of color, but also I think it's also going to be a lucrative industry. Mayor Gilliam was kind enough to sort of lob up for me. He mentioned that this is the new gold rush. And when you look at the gold rush, who made money? There wasn't a lot of people finding gold. It's the picks and the shovels. When you look at the Kennedy family, where Joseph Kennedy made his money was during Prohibition, not by selling alcohol, but by creating barrels. And so these are the opportunities that I think people in this room and folks that I care about should think about and take advantage of. And so when I prepare for a speaking engagement like something like this, I really want to give practical knowledge and practical information about what you can do to prepare yourself and ideas to think about in terms of how you can grow your own businesses. Because let me tell you, there's a lot of folks who want to talk about diversity and inclusion in this space. And there's a lot of folks who, will serve you that lip service. But ultimately, the only opportunities that they're talking about are being bud tenders, are being trimmers, of very low-level opportunities. What I want to talk about is creating generational wealth. So in my mind, cannabis provides not only an opportunity for generational wealth creation, but also for restorative justice. I think my colleague Leo Bridgewater did a great job in setting the table for why that's important. I'm sure I don't have to tell this community why it's important for restorative justice to take place through cannabis, but let's talk about generational wealth and where we go with it. So I am going to give credit to my good friend and colleague and comrade in arms, Amber Center, who is based out of Oakland, California. She is a co-founder of an organization, a nonprofit organization called Supernova that helps women of color, specifically who participated in an illicit market, move into the legal market and obtain licenses. So not too long ago, Amber was part of a panel in which she put together a discussion called Ballin' on a Budget, Low Barrier Entry Ideas. And so she was kind enough to share some of her ideas, and I'd love to just pass those on to you. So when you're thinking about the industry, you'll hear a lot of noise about cultivation, harvest, and retail sale. And if you go to some of these events, you would think that that's all that's happening in the industry. Reality is very different, of course. So first and foremost, let's talk about delivery. So delivery can look and take on several different forms, from delivery direct from dispensary to homes, from dispensary to nursing homes, facilities, caregiving centers. You can also think about what it looks like in terms of subscription box, mail order delivery. Those are also very low entry points for delivery services. Scheduled delivery services, right? Like, so you're not open 7 days a week, maybe you're open 2 days a week. Subscription boxes certainly offer that that flexibility also, in that you can schedule these things and have very specific delivery dates, so your overhead is less. Another idea that she had proposed is that you vary some things and have a specialized delivery. Her suggestion is a medicated fresh food box. Hot pizzas together with your cannabis delivery. Amber also mentioned some low barrier entries in terms of manufacturing businesses. When we're talking about manufacturing businesses, we're not only talking about processing, in other words, turning your flower, which is your raw form of cannabis, into the variety of things that are happening in the Pacific Northwest, unfortunately not in this state. But you've got your concentrated things, your edibles, your topicals, your tinctures, your suppositories. I mean, there's a whole, there's all kinds of methods of ingestion. And, as a consumer and as a patient, that affords you so many opportunities to ingest your medicine. In terms of manufacturing, a couple other ideas that she had suggested is that you really specialize and you pick a specific type of product. For instance, pre-roll joints. They're, I'm not somebody who knows how to roll a joint to save my life, but these things are super easy. You can buy cones now and stuff them yourself. But that's something that's really taking off in the Pacific Northwest in terms of an easy ingestion method. Topical creams are also something that's really important. Distribution is another area in which it's a low entry point to get into the industry. You're looking at probably about $1 million in terms of an investment, and that's most of your overhead, your vehicles, your licensing, your insurance and bonding, office space and such. Let's see. My favorite area that she highlighted was special events. So one of the things that we really need to talk about is what your licensing should look like, right? So it's one thing to just say legalize. It's another thing to say what kinds of licenses should be available. And for low-income communities, for marginalized communities, it's very important that we have these low-level licenses. What we saw in Massachusetts just happened about a month ago. A good friend of mine, Shalene Title, is one of the commissioners who's on the 5-person Cannabis Control Commission. And they faced, I'll speak specifically for Shalene. Shalene faced an uphill battle in that she was one of 5 commissioners and the only one who voted yes to legalization, which I think is crazy. But be it as it is, what they did was they unleashed their rules and regs about 2.5 weeks ago. But prior to that, they had done listening tours in various communities to determine not only what the interest level was, but also to get input in terms of what ideas folks in the community have for licensing. And one of the things that Shalene and the commission wanted to do was to make sure that there were these low-level licenses. So, for instance, a yoga class. You're permitted to have cannabis with your yoga class. You're permitted to have cannabis at a coffee shop. Painting classes, all these different things that are very low entry points to be part of a business owner in the cannabis industry. Unfortunately, in Massachusetts, the commission got a letter from the governor about a month and a half ago saying, put that on the brakes, we don't want to talk about those licenses, those are day 2. Well, unfortunately, what that does is that low-income entry point is gone. And so folks who are able to obtain those other licenses will have that leg up, that ability to start their businesses early, to start thinking about expansion, growth, other things that they can get into, while folks who have lack resources to capital have to sit and wait. Doesn't work, and it shouldn't work like that in New Jersey. I mean, it's very important that we make our lawmakers know that these sorts of licenses are important to the community. To be able to have a day of event license. For me personally, I'm an attorney, but New York, we are still in a prohibition state. And so while I advise clients, there's not a whole lot of work to do. And unfortunately, this is a passion of mine, and I've committed myself in the last 4 years, but I'm also eating ramen noodles. And so, as much as that's delicious, I have to eat, I have to pay my bills. And so one of the things that I'm doing, and I'll give you a little shameless plug, is that I've created an events company. And so what we're doing is not only are we supporting various events that are happening around the community, like a group called Revel, which specializes in technology-focused things that are happening in the cannabis space. So they had an event last week. My company was hired to provide that event support. We do that for a number of different companies. I also am producing the first Cannabis Law Summit. It's a 2-day law summit devoted entirely to cannabis. 1 day will be devoted to legalization efforts, and we have elected officials. We're hoping that Cynthia Nixon will also come. If she's listening, please come and speak at the Cannabis Law Summit in New York. And then the second day is devoted entirely to attorneys, to give them the tools and resources to understand not only how to stay compliant, how to stay ethically within the guidelines of the American Bar Association and the New York State Bar Association, but also to give them the hot button issues that are important in understanding the industry, like intellectual property. You can't get a federal trademark for anything cannabis related. Banking issues. We have a problem called 280E, which is a section of the tax code that doesn't allow for certain deductions. So all these hot button issues we'll be addressing in the Cannabis Law Summit. And for me, that was just another way for me to not only stay engaged in the industry, but also to make money while I'm waiting for legalization. Another thing I do is, I've got a lot of hustles. I started 2 professional networking groups. I have the Asian Cannabis Roundtable and the Latinx Cannabis Roundtable. The co-founder of the Latinx group is Ronnie Soto, who is a resident of New Jersey and a big advocate within the space. Both of those 2 groups meet on a monthly basis. And for us, the goal is to not only promote each other in the current opportunities that we have. Many of us are not in cannabis, but still want to promote each other. And then the second piece to our meetings is to have an education piece. So every month, a new member comes and they teach us something. The first meeting that we had at the Asian Cannabis Roundtable, we learned about prohibition as it relates to people of color. And guys, it was something new that I learned. It all started with Asian people. Chinese Americans who were smoking opium when they were brought over here to work the railroads. And surprise, surprise, white women who were doing all kinds of things with opium at the same time. But for whatever reason, it became an issue when Chinese men started smoking. And then throughout history, you can follow drug policy as it relates to not only racism, but also marginalized communities and what that looks like. And again, I don't think it's a surprise, but what we've done as a country is then exported our racist attitudes and our drug policies back to these countries. So I'm born in Korea. 3 generations ago, I'm told that cannabis was something that was grown and treated like a medicine or a tea, just like most traditional countries. Now, you hear stories all the time about Korean pop stars who are being put in jail for smoking a joint. So that's a contribution that we've made to the rest of the world, unfortunately. Last thing that Amber has on her list, which I think is a little neat, waste management. Nothing I had thought about in terms of this industry, but certainly there's a lot of waste And I think of the Serranos when I think of waste management in New Jersey, so potentially there's some synergies there. But that's coming from cultivators, that's coming from manufacturers, testing facilities. There's all kinds of waste. And a lot of these opportunities that I just mentioned are things that can be started now, and translate to other industries. So there's no reason why you couldn't start these sorts of businesses now and just wait for legalization and just transfer right over. A colleague of mine, a good friend, Ophelia Chong, has a company called Stockpot Images, which is like the Getty images for photos within the cannabis industry. And what she always says and reminds me of is, cannabis is an industry just like anything else. You put your title here and then put cannabis in front. So I'm a cannabis attorney. There's cannabis insurance agents, there's cannabis real estate agents, anything like that. I mean, it's going to happen, and there are ways to do that. Those are easy ways to get into the industry. Now I'm going to talk about some even lower cost areas that folks have entered the industry. So these are actual examples of different businesses, and I'm pleased to tell you that I'm going to be able to tell you specifically the dollar amount that each of these businesses had their startup capital. So first and foremost, we have lodging, bed and breakfast, right? This is New Jersey, this is Atlantic City specifically, so tourism is going to be incredible here. A gentleman, a New York attorney named Joel Schneider, opened Bud and Breakfast in Denver. 3 locations now, he's got 22 rooms, he charges $149 to $399 a night. He started with an investment of $30K, a little high, but that included all the rent, furniture, the reservation software, website, base renovations. So, in terms of opening your own bed and breakfast, that would be a fairly simple opportunity. And guys, this is not something that would require a license. You're not touching the plant. So you don't have the 280E issue. You don't have an issue with having to obtain a license. Sorry, I say this as it should be. Painting classes. I love this idea. Puff, pass, and paint. So I'm sure you guys know about these places that you go and you bring a bottle of wine and they let you paint. Same concept. Puff, pass, and paint was started by a woman named Heidi Pease. $2,000 initial investment. She rented space, she bought paint, brushes, canvases, easels, and marketing materials. Today, she licenses that business, so again, she doesn't have any issue with growth or touching the plant at all. She licenses to Denver, Washington, D.C., and Oregon. She began with 8 students and now offers classes up to 25 people per class, and she sees over 150 people participate each week. Again, doesn't touch the plant, something that could start right away. Florists, I like this idea too. $1,500 investment. A woman named Beck Coop, Buds and Blossoms in Centennial, Colorado. She does marijuana-enhanced arrangements for weddings. So what happens is people come in, they bring their receipt for their bud, so she knows where it came from and she doesn't have any issue. She puts it in a beautiful arrangement and she provides it for the day of. So while she physically touches the plant, technically and legally she doesn't touch the plant, so she doesn't have any TOIDE issue and she doesn't have any licensing issue either. Now that may change depending on the state, but that's the scheme that's there. Bike dispensary tours, another great idea, something that would work on the boardwalk. A gentleman named Todd Roll started this business in Portland, Oregon, called Pedal Bike Tours. He charges $69 for a 3-hour Portland pot tour. It includes ice cream at the end. And then what he does is he just partnered together with a rental bike company, and he provides accessories like a rain capes, and insurance. And you are welcome to consume your product at any time, but he does not provide it or touch it. So again, no problem with any sort of compliance issues. Certainly we have delivery services. Ease is one of the more noteworthy ones. Kevin McCarty started that business in San Francisco with an initial investment of $400,000. The majority of that was for development of apps and computers. Drivers work for the dispensaries who contract with Ease. They get paid $16 an hour, very similar to Uber scenario, and I'll rush through, sorry. Industry consultant, very similar to what Harvest 360 does. Very little startup costs, website, putting together your team, but offering consulting services. And certainly for small businesses, it would be vital to have outside services like consulting services if you're not able to bring those folks in-house. Extraction and processing. There's a gentleman named Bert Linnetz. He was a supplier for a company called Torrance Lab Solutions. They were just a regular medical supply company. He saw an opportunity in Torrance, California, and he created Blaze Lab Solutions, and they just supply medical equipment to dispensaries and laboratories. Space designers. I don't know if you guys have seen any pictures of some of the retail dispensaries, but they're gorgeous, and that's a whole industry just designing those spaces. Cuisine and catering, certainly catering is another area that's going to be huge, and certainly for Atlantic City, that'll be a very big opportunity. So you've got folks who are marrying infused beverages with gourmet meals, they're infusing the meals, they're offering it as as a side component. I went to an event in Denver not too long ago where along the table there's a fabric and pre-rolls and all kinds of things, and on the side, but those opportunities are really huge. And they'll provide obviously safe consumption space. And so, until you have social consumption where you'll have dedicated spaces, folks who are subject to various housing rules, government housing and such, where you can't consume safely, can take advantage of some of these other opportunities like a catering or a food venue. Security companies, certainly there's going to be a huge need for experts who understand the compliance around security. I think I mentioned edible products. There's, I can go on and on about edible products. There's beverages, there's drinks, there's THC infused, there's CBD infused, there's sort of bevy of things. Beauty products, skin creams, lotions, baths. And again, the majority of these things are not being consumed, and you can do these with CBD derived from industrial hemp, which negates any illegality issue. Nonprofit organizations. Leo and I both founded nonprofit organizations that are thriving. There's no reason why you couldn't start a professional networking group, educational opportunities. So,
folks, I know y'all have questions for Leo, Dianna, David, Kristin. Let's hear them. Yes, sir. Come your way. I'm doing my banner wave routine tonight.
I know a lot of people came out tonight because there's an interest in investment. How does a group of people go about starting a consortium, investing probably $25,000, maybe 40 people? That would be the equivalent of $1 million. So, how would we go about doing something like that?
I don't pretend to be a finance expert, but that is something that I had looked at doing. The gentleman behind you is somebody that you should talk to afterwards. We have a representative from Obsidian Elite who could probably speak to that a little bit better. What I'm seeing in this space is there are a number of folks putting together private equity funds, VCs, and various tools and so I would seek out a professional who could guide you in that direction because it is still a Schedule I drug.
Okay, if you're just joining us,
Hello,
this is
my name
Facebook
is
Live.
Well.
Questions and
City
answers.
Investment Association. I'm actually from Atlantic City. So hello to all of my fellow people from Atlantic City. I grew up right over near Mississippi Avenue. We started off with Leo Bridgewater a little while back. Back in September, he actually introduced us into the industry. It's myself and 3 other partners. We're doing a $50 million raise to do investments for minorities and working class people to, one, be able to invest in the industry and be able to garner the same type of return that millionaires are doing. At the same time, everything that they told you in reference to how much it's going to cost for you to enter as an owner-operator, you're going to have those difficulties. You're even going to have greater difficulties if you're a minority. Over 8,000 licenses have been awarded nationwide. Guess how many have been awarded to African Americans? Less than 15. So what you have to understand is that you're going to run into some barriers, and this is not necessarily based upon the fact that you're black. It's based upon capital. It's a high cost of entry. So what we're looking to do is create a space where we can be able to provide capital when others may tell you no. So if you want to find out how you can invest, go to obsidianinvestment.net. See me after this panel discussion, and we'll be able to provide you with some opportunities for you, one, to be able to become an investor, and if not that, to be able to also become an owner-operator if that's the path you want to take. Appreciate you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Who's next for the question? Yes.
What type of licensing would be required to produce edibles? And what would the cost be?
Sorry, we have limited mics around here.
Okay, sorry about that. That would be producer. The licensing pricing is not exactly. Okay, yeah. Because right now there's two things that are happening right now. There is the shoring up of the New Jersey medical marijuana program. Currently, we have about 18 to 19,000 people enrolled. The governor would like to see that up to 270. Simultaneously, at the same time, working on the bill for the legislative for the adult use bill. That's where the quote unquote recreational. And understand, recognize my verbiage. I'm purposely saying adult use because we try to stay away from the term recreational. You're kind of like invoking kids, or you're thinking that something is fun or anything like that, and that ain't what this is. Philosophically, personally, I think all consumption is medicinal or supplemental. We all have what is called an endocannabinoid system, and so there are things that cannabis helps when it comes to the endocannabinoid, our body's ability to heal itself. But the answer to your question is the license you want to go for is processor, and the cost.
So right now, there's a piece of legislation that has been introduced that has a breakdown of some of the application fees and licensing fees. And right now, for producers and processors, the application fee, non-refundable application fee is $50,000.
Oh, is that all?
And then your licensing fee would be $20,000 per year. That's a hell of a lot of money, right? And so, as I mentioned before, though, that this piece of legislation is not finalized. We want to make sure that these licensing fees are brought down so that everyday New Jerseyans have a real shot at being able to apply for these licenses and acquire these licenses. Which is why it's critical for you to take action, right, and make your voice heard and tell your legislators that we need to bring those fees down, because otherwise it's just going to benefit wealthy, largely out-of-state folks, and we need to make sure that we build an industry here in New Jersey that works for New Jerseyans.
And just so you, again, remember I told you there's a lot of information that's being passed out, so the best thing to do right now would be to record, but if you want to write some things down, there are networks in which you should actually plug into, such as NJUMR, ACLU, New Jersey Cannabis Commission, Canada, CANNAGHER, Minorities for Medical Marijuana. These are all organizations that are actually doing the groundwork and also have vast networks of expertise, people who are actually doing this. Regular folks like us that have already bumped their heads for us to actually learn from. So the first investment is in yourself.
Hi. Will there be any restrictions on where you can bank your money, your profits?
I'm sorry, say that one time.
Will there be any restrictions on where you can bank your profits?
Yes, right now it's still federally illegal And so the way there's all kinds of ways around it, you know, like a lot of the dispensaries, particularly like in Colorado and stuff, they're actually doing things like putting it into a safe and then paying their bills on through cash. But I think David will probably be a better one.
So the short and skinny is this all applies to 280, which Kristin kind of talked about before. And so the banking, I tend to stay away from giving advice on that personally. There are subject matter experts that can find legal remedies to ensure that all of the cash and the banking is appropriately conducted, and anything there's just a lot of risk with that. So just make sure you're getting your information from a subject matter expert, probably an attorney or a master accountant that has a significant amount of experience in that regard.
In the local New York area, where it seems success with people getting bank accounts are with credit unions, and also keep an eye on Canada. TD Bank is a Canadian bank. They're really interested. That's one of the noise that I'm hearing. I have an account with TD Bank.
We have a question right here. We can't hear you, sir, so we're going to go to the question.
And just for national banks, just as an FYI, there are some people who are able to access accounts with national banks, but the significant risk is that those banks will be, those accounts can be shut down at any point in time. So you really have to pay close attention and be very careful. And as David said, you really should talk to somebody, a licensed professional who can advise you about what would work best for your situation.
I have two questions. Are there a set number of licenses that will be awarded to the state or Atlantic City in general?
So right now, one of the bills that has been introduced does have a set number of licenses. It does have a cap on the number of licenses that can be issued. Those numbers are pretty low. I think it's like 15 for cultivation and so about a dozen or so cultivation, maybe up to 400 retail across the state with a limit of like 10 per legislative district. But the problem with putting a cap on the licensing fees is that that's it, right? Once you reach that cap, there is no more business. There are no more business companies that can be started. So we actually advocate for removing that cap and allowing more competition, more businesses to start, which can help. You know, if you want to undercut the underground illegal market, you need to make opportunities for people to leave the underground market and join the legal regulated market. So the best way to shoot yourself in the foot, we think, is by limiting the number of people who can enter the legal regulated space. But again, it's not finalized. So this is why it's crucial for each and every one of you to really contact your legislators and tell them that we need to make sure that we leave the doors wide open for economic opportunities and businesses to be created here in the Garden State.
We have one more question.
One more question.
This gentleman, and then
realistically, how far is New Jersey away from legalization?
That's a great question. I love that question. So we have come a long way from where we were even just a couple of years ago when legislators were not taking this issue seriously at all. Now we have a governor in place who campaigned on this issue, right? Governor Murphy has promised to sign legislation if it gets to his desk. So our job, the job of my job, the folks here on this panel, and each of your jobs is to make sure that the legislation that winds up on his desk is the right bill. He has said during his budget address just a short while ago that he wants to see legislation by the end of this calendar year. So we don't have much time to get this done, but we know we can get it done. We can get it done right. We can take the best things of what's happening in other places across the country, bring them here to New Jersey, make sure it works for the special place that is New Jersey. But we can do it, we can get it done before the end of the year, but we need your help. We critically need your help. Your legislators aren't going to do squat unless you tell them to.
I have a question as far as seeing as though the mayor is specifically talking to the governors. Is Atlantic City going to be like the hub or the starting point, or are they going to have a focal point where it's going to be located as far as where? And also, with that being said, small as Atlantic City is, are there going to be limitations as far as zoning, as far as where it can be, where you can't have it?
Okay, first off, your question on zoning and where it can be, that's actually up to you guys and your city council. Dianna couldn't, she hit the nail on the head. Dianna and I have gone up and down the state of New Jersey. I've been from Shrewsbury, New Jersey to Sicklerville, talking about this very issue. And so what we can tell you, we can't stress this enough. This is the part where we actually need y'all now. We are that part now, where we need everybody here to show up somewhere to talk to your legislative the elected officials, because they remember I said season 1, episode 2, they still say gateway drug. And so the fact that they don't get to hear this now, as far as a focal point goes, I think that I don't think you would want specifically a focal point. You just want it to be something that's good about your city in terms of for the industry as a whole. Atlantic City, I can tell you, because when we were in Las Vegas and I was on that tour with your mayor, a lot of the people, Vegas was on notice when they knew that the mayor of Atlantic City was there. In fact, half of the Nevada State Assembly and their Attorney General came to our event specifically to talk to your mayor, to specifically show, and he was shown we figured out what was done right and what was done wrong. Again, evidenced by the sense of urgency in which he spoke, because he understood exactly how this could play out. And to be quite honest with you, as a citizen, as a resident of the city of Trenton, when you hear these different towns talking about how they want to ban sales and all that stuff, okay, good. Okay. That's more rather than here. You understand what I'm saying? You got people who we have these elected officials who are supposed to be making informed decisions. How you gonna say no to something that ain't even here yet? How is that even an informed decision? How am I supposed to feel good about you representing me and you saying no? In the midst of an opioid abuse and addiction epidemic and 25,000 arrests a year. So basically, you're going to build this on my back, turn around, make a buck off of it, and then lock me out of it? You must be out your rabbit mind. I'm from Jersey. We don't get down that way. And so that's what, again, we need you. Dianna and I are at the point now, from the advocacy standpoint, where your voices and what you want and how you want this to play out is paramount at this point.
Sorry, so in terms of zoning specifically, however, I would suggest that you look at what the liquor license zoning looks like. It will probably be very similar, and that's stuff that you could take a look at today. And so you can identify, where in that community operations can go just based on the existing. However, what's happening out west, what needs to happen here in New Jersey, is that folks need to sit down and look at that zoning and see if it needs to be revised. Right, because what it'll entail is you're thinking about public spaces, you're thinking about parks, schools, churches. In New York City, there's also a prohibition against having multiple liquor licenses in, I think it's more than 3 licenses within 500 feet. So you'll probably see something similar here. So once you take a look and you understand what your local zoning is, that's when you sit down with your mayor and say, okay, we need to reject this. We need to take another look at this, because the reality is that maybe nothing could be zoned appropriately. And so you need to take a look at what that looks like today in advance of the law. And what Leo and Dianna are trying to stress is that this is urgent. The David and I were just joking earlier today that John Boehner is all of a sudden on board with marijuana. I don't know if anybody saw Scott's Fertilizer just purchased Sunlight Supply, which is one of the largest lightings and nutrient supply companies for agricultural customers. So, these folks are just, they're looking over your shoulder and they're waiting accounts. And until your laws reflect community-minded licensing and small businesses, you see John Boehner coming in here soon.
From the banks when the banks are not allowed to loan money out according to the federal laws. So my question is, in terms of Colorado, how can these people here obtain financing, and how would they do that from what banks when the banks are not allowed to loan out money? Okay, since the federal law disallows the loans on marijuana.
Great question, and unfortunately, you're right. The banks are not going to give a cannabis company a loan today, nor would they invest in those companies. So the way that the industry has really funded itself is going through private investment sources. So using Regulation A, Regulation B. Again, those are two ways of fundraising, and you also have private equity firms that I've cited on a little earlier, and then private investors, angel investors, and unfortunately that's the reality. You're going to find yourself out there with this debt and doing a lot of work to raise that capital today. So we see federal regulation, it's going to be likely that it's going to be the main means of raising capital.
But again, I would suggest that the majority of the businesses are not going to be touching the plant. So let's not focus on the plant. Let somebody else take that risk. It's still federally illegal. I would suggest that we think about these other small businesses that are ancillary, that can survive on their own, that have no implications, that don't have any sort of licensing, but support that industry. The pigs and the shovels.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Kristin is absolutely right. The gentleman, Houenou with Obsidian Elite, that's one of those private equity fund folks that's trying to put things together, crowdsourcing. I will say this, do not allow yourself to get caught up in the emotion of trying to get in on the ground floor and rushing yourself into something you don't fully understand. Be very careful. I'm weary whenever I suggest anything to anybody and stuff like that, because we're talking about folks' money. So do your research. And like I said, I cannot stress this enough. The first investment is in yourself. Making sure that you are in the network. This is where those have the separate in terms of an advocacy standpoint and also with the business ties too.
Curious about, and I know nothing's finalized yet, but what would be any tiering of the licenses? And I ask this because I worked in California for 3 years, cultivating for a small collective of people who we considered ourselves to be craft cannabis. And I ask this as well as a concerned consumer because that's what I like. As a consumer, I don't like these big companies, large facilities where there's not so much attention to detail as there is with these smaller craft cannabis grows, as well as a different tiering for non-hydrocarbon extractions.
Yes, there will be, but the way it's going to work here is, like Dianna was saying, there's going to be 12 cultivated. This is in response to the expansion of the New Jersey medical marijuana program. This is what is right now. And what is right now is that they're going to open up the program for 12 cultivating licenses. This is, again, medical. 12 cultivating licenses, 4 per region, north, central, and south. And there's going to be an initial round of 16 more licenses from the distribution. The current 6 license holders that are in existence right now 5 operating, the 6th one's getting ready to come online. Harmony Foundation, they should be harvesting, I think, in the next month or so. But each of those dispensaries have been given the authorization to right now put in the waiver to open up satellite locations. They are the one, because they were the first to get in, they have that vertical model that we talked about earlier, which is from seed to sell. And so how the satellite locations will look, it will be basically the main location is going to be feeding those satellite locations. Like I said, it's going to be a horizontal model. So depending on what it is that you are wanting to do and how you want to get into this space is solely depending on, what you want to do. The other thing too is to speak to Kristin and Dianna's point earlier, when it comes to the updating of zoning laws, recognize we're talking about legalizing or zoning something that's never been here before. Okay, so we're not talking, and so you have to recognize what the effect will be. Do you all know who one of the largest private benefactors of cannabis going legal in Colorado was? Papa John's. Think about it, you've seen a lot more Papa John's commercials in the last few years. Just so happens when cannabis went legal in Denver, Papa John's was the biggest pizza chain. And so it was basically pretty much an adrenaline shot. That's how they can afford Pete Man. So these are all things in terms of from a zoning perspective and the update and also the writing of variances. These are the things that your elected officials, your city council, and your mayor actually need to hear your voice. You can't sit there and watch this on the news or on your phone and read about it and think let someone else take care of it, because this is how we got to where we are right now. Again, this is a conversation that we are late to, we're not too late, but you need to get engaged. And you need to see a lot of you.
Very quickly before I hand it to Kristin, on the tiering, there is contemplation of scaling the licensing fees based on the size of your business. So legislators do have an appetite. They are aware that small business owners shouldn't have to have the same licensing fee requirements as these big, giant companies. So there is appetite to do that. So I'm from New York, and in New York we are going to have traditional micro licensing in the same way that you were mentioning. California and New York are the only states that have that. It'll be based on canopy sites.
You mentioned that there's a bill pending. Can you tell me what the approximate cost of a legal? You mentioned that there's a bill pending. Can you tell me the approximate price that would be for a retail license?
Yes. So the one bill that has been introduced in the Assembly that has the licensing, that has contemplated some licensing fees, it has proposed some certain licensing fees. I'll go ahead and run through those very quickly. For producers and processors, the non-refundable application fee, again, $50,000. The licensing, the initial licensing fee would actually be $150,000 for 3 years, and then afterwards it would be $20,000 per year for renewal. If you want to be a retailer, the non-refundable application fee would be $10,000. The initial licensing fee for 3 years would be $22,500, and then $5,000 renewal licensing fee every year. Transporters, people who actually transport cannabis between growers and retailers, that actually has the lowest entry point. The application fee there would be $2,500, and the initial licensing fee would be $7,500 for 3 years, and then about $2,500 a year thereafter. So those are the proposals that this one piece of legislation has put forth for the licensing fees. But again, like $50,000 non-refundable application fee is ridiculous. So we need to make sure that is brought down. $150,000 just to get the license, that is ridiculous. We need to bring those numbers down.
This is why we say we need you. This is the part and that's just one of the bills. There is a number of bills And the fact of the matter is that we just need we're at that point where we need it. The state does. For the adult use side, that would be this calls for the formation of the Department of Marijuana Enforcement. And then on the medical side, that's the Department of Health. So.
Excuse me, don't forget that we live in New Jersey. And don't we know what New Jersey's about? Taxes and money.
If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
That's true. But I just want to drop this on you. It's something that you can invest individually. Years ago, long before we started talking about, I went to the first meeting, I said this is the first meeting that we had at the library. If you want to do some micro investment on your own, go to the stock market. Canopy Growth is the one that I'm involved in. My goal is to get 1,000 shares. Right now, I started out, it was $4.75 a share, now it's $24 a share. Canada is getting ready to blow up because they're going with the domestic and the pharmaceutical part of it, the adult use of it. I think July the 7th, something like that. The whole country of Canada. Canada ships it to Germany. They can't get enough of it. So I'm saying if you want to do some micro investments individually, go to E-Trade and buy Canopy Growth Corporation. It's $25 a share.
I can't, I agree, but I can't give financial advice. That is not my lane, okay?
I like Serrano straight at 5, but the grow facility is going to cost $3 million or $12 million. Why not charge $150 for the license? We're talking about big money.
I think that's a great question. You should come to testify in Senate committee and say that to your assemblyman, because that's not.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
If it's $3 million or $50 million for a grow, why not charge the $150,000 license fee and use it for investment in education or whatever it is?
I agree. I 10,000% agree with that. I just think that this is why it's stuff like comments like that need to be directed at your assemblymen and your elected officials. This is where, again, Dianna and I need you.
And so just to piggyback on the
Hearing meeting, what's out of it, Robert?
and so basically to answer your question, so the reason why some folks would like to see those numbers come down is essentially to make it more of a fair market. And if I'm going to invest $3 million into a cultivation, it seems to me almost like a fallacy to say you have to invest more into an application, whereas the return on investment for the state is going to be based on the product sold, the taxes generated from that. So why not put that money into production and not into a flight for some congressman to go check out Vegas or other things.
And just one practical note. So there's a lot of energy and a lot of people now. I will understand how critical it is for you to talk to your representatives. Guess what? You have an opportunity to do so on April 21st, 3 days from now. No, 2 days from now. At Rowan Community College, the Assembly Oversight Committee is having a hearing. They want to hear from the public about how they feel about legalization, why it should be legalized or why it shouldn't. So I encourage you all to go if you can. It'll be at Rowan Community College in Glassboro, April 21st.
10 a.m.
It starts at 10 a.m. And you can look up more information online. And we have, if you go to NJUMR's website, njumr.org, on our events tab, we have the details of the address and location.
So my one big concern that I have is if I were to look to start out in the industry, manufacturing, processing, whatever, these startup costs are astronomical compared to other states that are set up. And gets lifted. Now we're talking about cross state borders. We're talking about competing with other places. And without the problem,
Federal or
yeah,
state?
I'm just saying every state is going to eventually compete once federal gets off of Schedule 1. Schedule 1 is the federal 1970 law that was passed.
There's a state.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm saying on a federal level, once the states are going to be able to communicate with each other, they're not going to be able to compete with each other. Because if you look at the startup cost here, might be astronomical compared to California, so it's going to put a lot of these guys out of business in different areas. So what are we doing for the state long term if this federally becomes allowed?
So I'd like to address this question. It's a very good question. And what you're talking about is interstate commerce and states now competing against each other, and it's a very legitimate concern. I think what New Jersey is doing from an application point of view, when you look at the way that they're scoring those applications, they're really invested in seeing technology that's going to make the difference. They're looking at the teams that are going to make the difference. So I really commend the state so far in reading their scoring system for the current medical bill, in the way that they're analyzing the various companies. It really does set them up for success. So when you're making a decision from a state point of view on who's going to get these licenses, you don't want to issue licenses to folks that have a high probability of failure versus what they're looking for is they're looking for top-tier teams, top-tier financing, top-tier technology with innovative strategies in their business plan, their performer models. And so that's the way that states can really identify who the winners are going to be versus the folks that are going to have a hard time competing in that interstate environment.
All right, now it is 8:30 and we're dwindling down here. So would anybody like to make a closing comment up there before we wrap up?
I just wanted to thank Jasmine. That's all.
I think everybody
This
came
was
out
Facebook
and thank you for sticking with us with a lot of information.
Jocelyn Sparkle.
But I hope it was really useful for you. Our top line messages for you here tonight are to get involved, get creative, think outside of the box. Connect with other people, connect with the folks in this room, look into some of the networks that Leo described, connect to investors, and talk about this issue. Through talking, you will find more opportunities. You will find more people to connect with, more people who you can link up with to get critical information, and really, if you're not at the table, remember, it's important to take action, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we need to make sure that you all raise your voices to make sure that everyday New Jerseyans have a shot at participating in this new industry that we're going to be building from the ground up. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. We can't let our legislators box us out of it.
I'd like to thank NJUMR for having us out here and allowing me to come and speak with you guys. I want to remind you all also that on the 21st, NJUMR is having town hall. What's that on the 21st? The Assembly Oversight Committee is having their hearings. On the 24th, the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus is also having a hearing here in Atlantic City, and on the 24th, the New Jersey Cannabis Commission and Minorities for Medical Marijuana will be hosting a lunch and learn. It is going to be located at 14 North Mississippi Avenue. It is from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and we have some of the brightest and most brilliant minds in the cannabis space.
Elizabeth, I'm turning this off.
Like us,
One person.
Come.